choices that you can make at the grocery store, and organic versus conventional, excuse me, is just another choice to add on top of it. So let's get to the bottom of it and figure out if organic is really worth it. Let me just grab my notes here. Okay, so you're trying to eat healthy, that means choosing plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins. But as you're shopping, you notice that there is like so many choices that you can make. So today we're focusing on whether you choose organic or conventional. So advocates of organic food say that it's safer, it's possibly more nutritious, often better tasting than non-organic food. And they also say that organic production is better for the environment and kinder to animals. Despite it costing more, sales are steadily increasing, and they have seen a very strong growth, 20% year over year since 1990, which is huge that it keeps going up by that much every single year. Okay, so what about the flip side? Some experts say that there's not enough evidence to prove that there's any real advantage to eating organic foods. And their reasoning is that there's really very limited information in people on actual health outcomes who consume organic products. So we're actually going to just set that aside for right now, and we'll come back to it because there is a lot in that statement right there. Okay, so before you decide whether organic food is worth it to you, let's take a look at some of the issues. I apologize for my kids screaming in the background there. Okay, so before October 2002, individual states followed rules for certifying and labeling organic products. And it was like kind of the wild west of organic farmers out there, kind of all just like doing whatever they felt was best, and just complying with their states' rules. But now all organic foods are grown and processed according to national standards set by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and that's USDA. If you ever see that around on the labels, you'll see USDA organic on there. So I'm going to cover a few of the bigger rules around organic labeling just so we're on the same page, and you can find some of these in my blog post as well. Organic crops must be produced without conventional pesticides and herbicides, synthetic fertilizers, sewage sludge, bioengineering, and ionizing radiation. So if you think about that just a little bit more, it means that conventional products, non-organic products, can be produced with those things. Organically raised animals must be given organic feed and kept free of growth hormones and antibiotics. And organic farm animals must have access to the outdoors, including pasture land for grazing. If a food has a USDA organic label, it contains at least 95% organic ingredients, and a government approved expert has inspected the farm where it was produced to make sure that farmers are following all those requirements. Okay, so is organic food safer? Well, if you're talking about pesticides, the evidence is pretty conclusive that your chances of getting pesticide residues are much less with organic food. So there was a large-scale study done by the Consumers Union, and research looked at data from more than 94,000 food samples in 20 different crops. They found that organically grown crops consistently had about 1/3 as many pesticide residues as the conventionally grown virgins. And organic foods were also far less likely to contain residues of more than one pesticide. And in 2012, a meta-analysis that was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine compared organic and conventional foods, found that exposure to pesticide residue was more than 5 times higher in conventional produce. A 2004 study found that organic food had significantly lower levels of toxic metals compared to conventional alternatives, and substantially higher levels of antioxidants, meaning that it was actually delivering a little bit more nutrition to your body. In some cases, these pesticides persisted on the fruits and vegetables even after they were washed or peeled. And even so, the amount of man-made pesticide residues that were found on the conventional foods were still below the level that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has deemed safe. But the real issue is whether those small doses over years and decades might add up to increased health risks down the line. And that is what there is not conclusive scientific evidence on yet. So this phenomenon is called bioaccumulation. You should look that up if you want to know more about bioaccumulation. It is very eye-opening to learn what substances and at which volumes get stored in your human body, because it cannot detox those on its own. Okay, so what if you what if you consistently buy non-organic version and consume 2/3 more pesticides than people who eat organic? Is it going to make a difference? So scientists don't really know, which means that there just hasn't been a large-scale double-blinded study done. And that's something to think about, though, because we are actually the guinea pigs in this whole thing. So I'm just going to throw this out there that if there was a large study being funded to prove if non-organic or conventional foods resulted in worse health outcomes in the future, how many of you would sign up for that? Would you want to raise your hand and be in that control group and say, yes, I will be the one that eats the conventional non-organic product for every single thing for the rest of my life to see if my health outcome was worse? Versus somebody who was in that organic group saying, yes, I will eat all the organic food for the rest of my life to see if my health outcome is going to be better. So think about that too. That's kind of just what's happening by our natural choices because nobody is funding a study like that right now. Okay, man-made pesticides aren't the only threats to food safety, though. There's also the question of natural toxins produced by the plant themselves. So in this arena, conventional foods may actually have an advantage because organic production steers clear of synthetic insecticides and herbicides. Organic crops usually contend with more pests and weeds than conventional crops. And this means that organic plants may produce more natural toxins because plants can't just get up and walk away if they're being attacked by an insect or an invading weed, so they just have to defend themselves. And just by nature, plants are equipped with their own chemical warfare, so they can ramp up the amount of toxins that they naturally produce to just try to fend off those insects and predators naturally. For example, if you haven't heard about this, when potatoes turn green, they produce a chemical called solanine. So when you see green potatoes, or if people have ever warned you not to eat green potatoes, that is because solanine is building up in the peel, which is what makes them turn green. 30% to 80% of that solanine lives in the peel of the potato, so go ahead and just peel those potatoes before you eat them. I dug into this a little bit more just to give you more information, and it looks like you'd have to eat about 2 pounds of very green potatoes to start feeling the effects of increased solanine that you may have just ingested. So if you're going to enjoy potatoes, like for sure enjoy them, just go ahead and take those peels off and don't eat more than 2 pounds of them in one sitting. Another safety concern you might have heard about around organic is that since organic foods use some manure fertilizers, that some critics will throw out there that there might be an increased risk of E. coli. And this, I will tell you outright, is unfounded because organic production standards do include very strict rules about composting and the application of manure. And there's very little evidence that organic food has bacterial contamination any more than conventional food. The bacterial contamination in any food usually actually happens because of improper handling after the food has left the farm, and conventional food is just as likely to be affected by that. So whether the issue is bad bacteria or pesticide residues, experts do agree that the best way to safeguard yourself is to thoroughly rinse all your fruits and vegetables with a fruit and veggie wash and then rinse them under running water. So you should even wash items that have an inedible skin like melons and citrus fruits, because if you're cutting the rind with a knife, it brings the contaminants from the skin into the inside of the fruit. So, and if you want to know my favorite fruit and veggie wash, go ahead and send me a PM and remind me to grab a picture of that with you because I don't have it right here with me. All right, is organic food more nutritious? So let's break this down and cover animal products first, and then we'll get to produce. So concerning animal protein, a recent study concluded that organic dairy and meat do contain about 50% more omega-3 fatty acids than non-organic or conventional animal dairy and meat. So omega-3s are linked to reductions in cardiovascular disease, improved neurological development and function, and better immune function. So getting enough in our diet is difficult just by eating the right amount and correct variety of food. So studies suggest that switching to organic in these categories would help you get closer towards your intake goals. So that's dairy and meat. Centers for Disease Control note that antibiotics used in food processing animals can have negative effects on public health. So that's another reason that we want to maybe look a little bit closer at getting organic for the meat and the dairy. Okay, so let's move on to organic produce. So when you look at organic produce and studies that have been done on organic versus conventional produce, no real and sustainable information has come out saying that organic produce has more nutrients necessarily than conventional produce. So, hey, Jess. Where am I right now? Okay, so right now no one can make a blanket statement whether organic produce is any more nutritious than conventional foods. A few studies have reported that organic produce can have higher levels of vitamin C, certain minerals, and antioxidants that are thought to protect the body against aging, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. But the differences are so small that they probably don't have an impact on your overall nutrition. There's one nutritional certainty, though, that if you want to get the most from your food, you want to eat it while it's fresh. So nutrients like vitamin C do oxidize over time, even though the nutrients might be higher in organic food to begin with. If it's sitting in your refrigerator or has traveled a very long way to get to you, you can lose that benefit pretty quickly. Plus, fresh food just tastes better, so this may be actually the reason that people report that organic food tastes better. Because organic farms tend to be smaller operations, they can often sell their products closer to the point of where they harvest. So don't necessarily be surprised if the organic fruits and vegetables in your market do taste more farm fresh than the comparable conventional produce that you might just find at your grocery store. Environmental concerns. So whether or not organic food is really safer or more nutritious, advocates do say that there's more compelling reason to go organic, and that is the health of the environment and society as a whole. So toxic and persistent pesticides do accumulate not only in the body but in the soil. So they accumulate in the water and they accumulate everywhere that they are applied. So eliminating those pesticides and fertilizers in the organic production system, we're just making sure that we're not contributing further to that pollution. So there are some very real cases of people getting cancer from direct exposure to Roundup and other commercial pesticides. Pesticide exposure has been linked to all kinds of other health conditions, from neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's to cancer and to birth defects. So though the health impacts of conventional foods on consumers remains unclear, the detrimental effects of the pesticides and other chemicals are more clearly documented in the case of farm workers with direct exposure. So there's also some evidence that people living in farm communities are at risk for chronic health problems as a result of repeated chemical exposure. So that's not even talking about the people that are working directly on the farms, it's just the people that live in the communities around them. So pesticides used in strawberry farms in California, for instance, are associated with an increased cancer risk among the children living in those areas, according to the Department of Pesticide Regulation. So it is something to strongly consider that if there is still a very high demand for conventional or non-organic foods in those areas, that people and farms will keep producing them and that they will keep using those pesticides and exposing their communities to that. But food experts caution that while the big picture is important, you must make the decision that makes most sense for you. So if price is within your food budget and you like the idea of fewer pesticides and more environmentally friendly production system, then organic might be for you. The price of organic is if it's outside of your food budget. For sure, don't skimp on healthy conventional foods just because you think that you need to save your pennies for the few organic things that you really want. I think the best that you can do for yourself is to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and eat a variety of them. So if you like the idea of organic food but aren't ready to go completely organic, you can always pick and choose. It doesn't have to be all for one or all for the other. So depending on your own needs and goals, let's choose organic for the foods that just contain the highest amount of chemical residue, and choose conventional foods with the least residue. I don't know if that made sense how I just said that. You get what I mean though. So if you're most interested in reducing pesticides in your food, in general, you want to buy organic if you're going to eat the skin of the fruit or the vegetable. Another great resource is to check the EWG, the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 lists. So I'm going to list off some of those for you. The Dirty Dozen highlights the conventional produce with the highest pesticide loads, and then the Clean 15 basically is just that Dirty Dozen list, like in reverse, but it has a lot more foods on it. So it's going to talk you over the cleanest things where you can just go ahead and buy conventional without having to worry that there is a high pesticide load on them. So the Dirty Dozen list, these are the things that you want to look most closely at getting organic, because if you buy the conventional versions, they have those higher toxin loads on them. So strawberries, spinach, kale, nectarines, apples, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, potatoes, and a couple of bonus things: bell peppers, cherry tomatoes, lettuce, cucumbers, and blueberries. Versus the Clean 15 list, where if you can't afford to get organic on everything and you want to get conventional, these are good choices to do just conventional. Avocado, sweet corn, but if you're worried about GMOs, then don't buy conventional corn. Get the organic version because organic corn is non-GMO. Pineapples, sweet peas, onions, papayas, eggplant, asparagus, kiwi, cabbage, cauliflower, cantaloupe, broccoli, mushroom, honeydew, watermelon, sweet potatoes, bananas, and mangoes. So go ahead and enjoy conventional of those, and you don't necessarily have to worry about high pesticide loads on those. And this list does change every year, so make sure you go back and review the new list for each year. If you are most interested in promoting the growth of organic farming through your choices, then buy organic foods that require large expanses of cropland in pasture, and those would be wheat, corn and other grains, and dairy foods and beef. If your concern is that you want more natural conditions for the animals and fewer antibiotics and hormones, then you want to buy products from organically raised livestock and poultry, such as milk, cheese, yogurt, eggs, and meat. So let's change gears a little bit and talk about prepared foods. So I know that it's not always possible to only eat whole foods of everything and only fruits and vegetables. So there are times when we're going to have to just run down the middle aisles of the grocery store and get some of those prepared foods. So let's talk about those labels. So when it comes to packaged foods, only a label that says 100% organic indicates a product made solely with organic ingredients. If it says organic, on the other hand, it means that 95% of the ingredients are organic. While if you see a label that says made with organic ingredients, it's reserved for products that have 70% or more organic ingredients in it. So what does that mean for human health? Well, we are exposed to a cocktail of chemicals from food on a daily basis. So it's not realistic to expect that we wouldn't have any pesticides in our body in this day and age. It would be ideal if we didn't. We just have to know a little bit more, like be a little bit more informed, and to think about what the future health effects might be. So let's recap how you can do organic on a budget. Regularly purchasing organic products just might simply not be financially feasible for many of you. So I personally just buy the organic to the extent that we can and as often as we can. So prioritizing your purchases, it's most important for young children, pregnant women, and those with weakened immune systems to reduce their toxin load. So sorry to the strong, healthy dads out there, but your pregnant ladies and your kids are going to have first priority at that organic apple that you got. So I also recommend buying organic animal products, including those eggs and milk, as often as possible because of the hormone load that those animals have received. Extensive use of antibiotics and extensive use of antibiotics in those animals that you subsequently eat can cause antibiotic resistance, and it also reduces that omega fatty acid content. So also note that companies might not be certified organic because of the cost associated with that regulatory burden, but a lot of companies do still pledge to not use hormones or any antibiotics. So it's a good second choice if you have time to look into those secondary sources. So I also recommend choosing organic for things that you or your household eat in large quantities, because the repetitive intake of pesticides from those foods can cause harm to your health more than just like a single sporadic exposure. I also recommend buying in season and local if possible. If buying organic produce in season it does tend to be much kinder on your wallet. So if you can visit a farmer's market here in Minnesota, it's really hard right now because everything is covered with snow. But come May, June, July, August, like we are all about our farmer's market. If you can purchase a crop share or a CSA, community supported agriculture, to get local in-season produce, that's also a really, really good thing. I also love Imperfect Foods. If you haven't heard about this, it used to be called Imperfect Produce, and now it's Imperfect Foods. So when they could partner with local growers in your particular area, and they include that local produce in your boxes. So they also helped distribute oversupply of produce that has imperfect appearance, but is still perfectly good to eat. So check them out. In the comments here, I will provide a link for you to get $10 off your first box if you're interested in doing that. And like I said, I really like them. They provide things more than just produce. You can get pantry items, you can get meat items from them, and also meat alternative items from them, which I have found super helpful. So the bottom line, if you have you decided if organic is worth it to you? My personal stance is that I want to minimize exposure to chemicals that could be harmful. So that means the lowest doses possible and as infrequently as possible. Ultimately, many experts do agree that eating a balanced diet while remaining conscientious about how your food choices impact your personal health, the health of the planet, and farming communities is key. And if you're not able to pay for that fancy organic apple, the fear of pesticides should not be a barrier to consuming lots of nutritious produce. Eating fruits and vegetables is good for your health, whether it's organic or not. Just make sure that you change it up. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. I do know that you guys have been putting a lot of questions and comments in our previous food posts from this week, and I'm going to be back with some suggestions on how to solve those challenges on Monday in another Facebook Live. So have a great weekend. I will see you guys all soon. Bye-bye.